What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. I got some exciting news in regards to the face of boxing, Gervonta Tank Davis, who holds the regular WBA junior welterweight title. Now that title will not be at stake in his next outing. He'll be fighting at a catchweight against Keith One-time Thurman. One time or Keith sometime Thurman, former unified welterweight champion. That fight will take place at a catchweight of 145 pounds. The fight is slated to take place December 9th to December 30th. Now, my sources also telling me that the fight will be on Showtime pay-per-view. This will be Tank Davis's 7th straight pay-per-view fight. This will be Gervonta Tank Davis, the face of boxing, fresh off of doing 1.2 million pay-per-view buys versus Ryan Garcia. This will be his 7th straight pay-per-view fight. It'll be his 7th time headlining a pay-per-view fight. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, you got to give Gervonta Tank Davis a lot of credit for taking this type of fight. Now, a lot of people say, well, Keith Thurman has been hella inactive. Last 4 years, he's fought maybe, once or twice? And that is also something that people can say, can bring light to, but the fact of the matter is he's going to be fighting a guy that only lost one time, and that was to the legendary Manny Pacquiao. This guy's got speed, great footwork, very athletic, got power in both hands. Now, the power has not been shown since he stepped up in competition, fighting top-level competition, but we got to understand he's going to be fighting a guy that's a naturally 130, 135-pound fighter, Gervonta Tank Davis. But as the great Floyd Mayweather Jr. said, skills pay the bills. And Gervonta Tank Davis believes that his skill is better than Keith One-time Thurman. And at the end of the day, his hand will be raised. So we will be to see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, when they first started looking at potential opponents for Gervonta Tank Davis, a lot of people assumed that it would be a rematch with Isaac Pitbull Cruz. But my source is telling me that that's not going to be the next fight. Now, that fight can definitely happen in 2024, but as far as Gervonta Tank Davis's next fight, Pitbull Cruz will not be his opponent. Now, Pitbull Cruz could very well be on the card. He can very well be on the undercard of Gervonta Tank Davis versus Keith Thurman. I'm also hearing that Frank Martin, a.k.a. The Ghost, could appear on the undercard too. Maybe we get a Isaac Cruz versus Frank Martin co-main event. We will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Also, a fight that I'm hearing could be coming to fruition is Isaac Pitbull Cruz taking on Gary Russell Jr. That could be a co-main event. Showtime is putting a lot of their top fights on pay-per-view. Not only the main event, but other fights that usually be on Showtime, like in this next pay-per-view fight coming up this Saturday between Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. You got a co-main event of Jesus Ramos versus Erickson Lubin. Last year or the year before last, that fight would have been on regular Showtime. But due to the fact that Showtime is downsizing their boxing platform, that those type of fights are going to be on undercards. That's one of the reasons why we didn't get Keith Thurman versus Yordenis Ugas. It was widely assumed and widely believed that that would be the next fight for one time, but what happened was the PBC wanted that to be the co-main event to Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. Keith One-time Thurman didn't like the money, and he also didn't like the fact that he was not going to be the main event. He didn't want to be a co-main event, especially in his last fight. He headlined a pay-per-view fight when he took on Mario Barrios. Before that, he was on pay-per-view taking on Manny Pacquiao. That fight did 600,000 pay-per-view buys. So Keith Thurman feels that he's a main event fighter, and at the very least, he should have been on regular Showtime. He damn sure didn't want to be on the undercard of a pay-per-view fight. So that was one of the reasons. Money and not being the main event was one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, one of the reasons why we didn't get Keith Thurman versus Yordenis Ugas. Instead, we getting Yordenis Ugas taking on Mario Barrios in a fight that's going to be on the undercard of Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. So we will see what happens. We will see what transpires. Now, I'm hoping that Gervonta Tank Davis versus Keith Thurman happens on December 30th, because if it does happen on December 9th, and those are the two dates that the PBC has reserved with the Nevada Boxing Commission for fights to take place in Las Vegas. They have December 9th reserved and December 30th reserved. As we know, December 9th is the date for undisputed lightweight champion Devin the Dream Haney to move up to 140 pounds and take on WBC junior welterweight champion Regis Prograis. That fight's going to take place in San Francisco, California, in the stadium where the Golden State Warriors play, going down December 9th on the Zone pay-per-view. So if they put Tank versus Thurman on December 9th, we're going to have two competing pay-per-view fights, which will hurt both pay-per-view numbers. Now, Tank versus Thurman going to do better numbers than Haney versus Prograis if they fight on the same night on pay-per-view. That's no doubt about that, but it would definitely hurt both numbers. And as we know, Gervonta Tank Davis just doing 1.2 million pay-per-view buys versus Ryan Garcia. He wants to do at least 500,000 versus Keith Thurman for people to consider that a successful pay-per-view. So we will see what happens. We will see what transpires. Now, another opponent that was mentioned to take on Tank Davis was Gary Russell Jr. That's about a month ago. That's what I thought it was going to come down to, Pitbull or Gary Russell Jr. But my intel, the last several days, I've been making contact with my source, and he been telling me, nah, it's not going to be Gary Russell Jr. They was talking about putting that fight in a DMV area, either in Baltimore or Washington, D.C. That was going to be what you call a backyard brawl, as those two cities are very close together, are very closely linked, and that was going to be a big fight on the East Coast. But again, when you do 1.2 million pay-per-view buys versus Ryan Garcia, you fight Gary Russell Jr., that fight going to do good numbers on the East Coast. But overall, how many pay-per-view buys will that fight do? I say it probably do somewhere in the 400,000 pay-per-view buys range. And so people will say that would be a disappointment coming off 1.2 million versus Ryan Garcia. You got people out here already saying that the reason why the fight did well between Tank versus Ryan Garcia was because of Ryan Garcia's and his 20 million Instagram followers. That was the reason why the fight did 1.2 million. And I don't believe that's the case, because Gervonta Tank Davis had been doing pay-per-views before he fought Ryan Garcia, and his pay-per-views were generating revenue. If they weren't generating revenue, they would have took him out pay-per-view, just like they did with the Charlo doubleheader on pay-per-view. That fight did 100,000, and both fighters in the next fight were not fighting on pay-per-view. Jermell didn't fight on pay-per-view after that doubleheader, and Jamal did not fight on pay-per-view after that doubleheader. So they let you know that pay-per-view fell well below expectation. And for Tank to be going on this 7th straight pay-per-view should let everybody know that his pay-per-views are very, very successful. And that's just a fact. And anybody saying otherwise is cap. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But that's what my source is telling me, man. We're finna get Gervonta Tank Davis versus Keith Thurman. One thing about Keith Thurman, he got a mouthpiece. He can sell a fight. He talk real greasy to his opponent. He's one of the best trash talkers in boxing. Gervonta Tank Davis, that's not his strong suit as far as being a great talker. He got better over the last several fights. I like the trash talking that was going on between him and Ryan Garcia at the press conference. I did like that. And Tank has gotten better, but early on in his career, he was very, very reserved. He was a guy that was very, very low-key, and he wasn't the guy that was the best trash talker in the world. He seems like he has upped his game as far as trash talking goes. And I think Keith Thurman will bring his game even more to another level. You'll see probably a more and more vocal Gervonta Tank Davis as him and Keith Thurman go back and forth in the lead up to their fight. And I think that'll help sell the pay-per-views, which is slated to take place either December 9th or December 30th, Las Vegas, Nevada, aka Sin City, on Showtime pay-per-view. In all likelihood, and in my humble opinion, it'll be going down December 30th. And I think that'll be the best course of action for that fight to take place, to maximize the revenue for that fight, instead of going head up with another pay-per-view on December 9th, that being Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But Calvin Ford who was the lead trainer for Gervonta Tank Davis, was on social media a few days ago, and I almost let the cat out of the bag, basically saying that Gervonta Tank Davis got a big fight coming up. We just trying to seal the deal, and it's going to turn the world upside down. Gonna have everybody in disbelief. It's gonna bring the boxing world to their knees. As everybody gonna be like, damn, he taking on that type of challenge, taking on that type of opponent. So when he said that, I started going behind the scenes, and I reached out to one of my contacts, and he told me, yes, it is indeed gonna be Keith Thurman. Now, it's not 100% done, but it's going down that road. They're just trying to finalize the last few details for that fight to come to fruition. But Keith Thurman is the fight they're trying to make happen, and the fight is going to take place either December 9th or December 30th. Now, the PBC has 2 dates reserved in November in Las Vegas, Nevada, as they got those 2 dates reserved through the Nevada Boxing Commission to host a pay-per-view fights either on November 4th or November 11th. And they're still trying to seal the deal on David Benavidez taking on Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. Now, it's a monkey wrench in this whole deal, and that is Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. It's supposed to be a 2-fight deal with the winner choosing the weight and the loser activating the rematch clause, which Errol Spence Jr. already did. And that fight is supposed to take place by December. So they could be trying to set it up where they have Tank versus Thurman main event on pay-per-view, and they have Crawford versus Spence 2 main event on pay-per-view, and maybe they try to slide Benavidez versus Andrade as a co-main event to one of those 2 main event cards. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Follow me on Facebook, Gerard Briscoe. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. And I holla.